Hey, it's Thursday, March 24th, 2022. Now I've got a few things to say. First, my heart goes out to everybody in North Texas and Louisiana who got hit by those tornadoes a small while back. From what I'm to understand, there were no losses of life, but you know how it is when you lose everything due to a freakish storm and stuff. That's a very big concern. And my heart goes out to all of them, and I hope that they recover at God's speed. The same goes for those in Japan. You know, there was an earthquake, and something could have happened to where they could have had another nuclear meltdown from a nuclear power reactor. Thankfully, they didn't, but they did have rolling blackouts. And as anybody knows, I mean, you get long periods of rolling blackouts. They're suffering through whatever weather conditions you've got. You know, if it's the summertime, you're baking. If it's the winter, you're freezing without that controlled air. Your food is spoiling without that electricity, etc., etc. The list goes on and on. List of casualties. And I'd like to just say, you know, keep your heads up, keep your faith. We got the faith in you guys, including everybody in Ukraine who's lost everything due to a war with Russia. Now, there's going to be migrants coming over here from the Ukraine, and I'm sure there's going to be opposition, maybe not as much as lately, but here in Texas, there's just no telling, just simply because of the simple fact that we've got this Operation Lone Star, which is a border protection policy. Now, I've complained about it. If you scroll through all the episodes that I've done throughout 2021, you'll find out in the middle of the year my huge opposition, my having to comment on this policy that claims to be the best border security ever. And here comes the reasons why finally something has come up to prove this commenter correct. Okay, Abbott and the Department of Public Safety, or DPS for short, which I'll be saying quite a bit, repeatedly boasts that the border operations have disrupted drug and human smuggling networks. But the state's claim of success has been based on shifting metrics that include crimes with no connection to the border, work conducted by troopers stationed in targeted counties prior to the operation, and arrest and drug seizure efforts that do not clearly distinguish DPS's role from that of other agencies. So, that being said, let me jump into what they're talking about. Okay, what the investigators are talking about. Greg Abbott, the governor, DPS, that's once again the Department of Public Safety, and the Texas Military Department, which technically, Texas has its own army. Those two agencies and the governor's administration have provided little proof to substantiate their statements. They fought back dozens of public record requests from news organizations that would provide a clear picture of operation accomplishments. DPS, for example, has made several significant revisions to the arrest data, including removing charges, which means they've arrested people under a bunch of charges, stripped many of them, but kept like one or two that might be legitimate. Okay, did not provide details that would help determine how the cases that are remained are connected to the goal of deterring border-related crime. Okay, they're not forking over the information that says we're protecting the border. At the same time, they're not even turning over information that says that they're not. It's all just fudged and denied. Okay, there's no details. Okay, they also failed to identify arrests and drug seizures that could have occurred without additional personnel made available through the operation. And that is pretty interesting because that's where Governor Greg Abbott has been moving National Guardsmen to the border, or more state troopers or DPS troopers to the border or some selected area, without giving any details as to why or which area they were sent to. We're all just to take the governor's word for it that it's for border security and that we're being protected, that you're being protected. Okay, the absence of clear metrics for measuring its accomplishments points to a larger problem in that Texas lawmakers have repeatedly increased the state border funding while providing minimal oversight of the operation. And this, now we're in the year 2022, but this has been going on for a total of 17 years, back before Governor Greg Abbott was in charge, back when it was Rick Perry that was in charge. So information and details and reports have been fudged, meddled with, and just simply denied for us to know, the people. Okay, now, many people don't know what the OLS, that's the Operation Lone Star, OLS has accomplished beyond arresting people and making them criminals, which is a very concerning, because it's an old Gestapo thing where, where people were arrested, criminalized for something, and again, not even reported as to what it was that they did. Most believe the problem is not criminal activity, but the sheer number of immigrants sometimes attempting to cross at once, straining resources and overwhelming border patrol. The solution is to address the reasons people are trying to live a better life here in the U.S. and provide more legal avenues to do so. Now that's just common sense. That's been the rule since God knows how long, and it's being completely neglected. So this is also something for those of you who might have Ukrainian visitors or whatever that you want to bring in from the Ukraine to expect. This is just one of the complications that Ukrainians might actually be undergoing, to be arrested and made into a criminal. Okay? Despite the fact that, you may not be American, but you're coming to this country brand new, and already, with no prior criminal record, you're already a criminal once you get here. That's very alarming. Operation Lone Star, or OLS, is spending millions up to billions of dollars in trying to manage something, but instead of using a plumber to fix the leak, it's using people to mop the floor. This is what one expert says, and I have to agree with that. It doesn't make any sense to get more troops and more cops and all this stuff over there, when in actuality, all you have to do is just let the people do their job, let law enforcement do their jobs, and they're fine. This is something that doesn't make sense to make cages. It doesn't make sense to, to confine them in prisons and stuff. It just doesn't make any sense. Texas spends more money on border security than any other state at the cost of taxpayers, or more than $2.5 million per week. Okay? And is expected to rise to $3 billion by 2023. All right. That's just BS. And this is what we're talking about. As part of the operation deployed, thousands of DPS troopers and National Guards members will be arresting migrants on criminal trespassing charges. Okay, that's a misdemeanor charge that is estimated to have made 40% of OLS arrests. Okay, almost half of Operation Lone Star arrests made in Operation Lone Star from mid-July to January of this year. You see a conundrum? Because I certainly do. Again, by simply making people criminals, as opposed to actually arresting criminals. actual criminals. Abbott said the operation is geared to provide maximum assistance to counties greatest affected, but federal statistics show that DPS shifted additional resources away from the counties experiencing the greatest influx of immigrants and drugs. In short, he's only providing security for his people, whoever it is that he chooses to declare in need of help. That speaks volumes. That is a huge cause for concern. Now, back to the money. In a resemblance of Bush Jr.'s days when he orchestrated the Robin Hood Project, which was a housing program that kept $2 out of every $3 for claiming, well, the program doesn't pay for itself. Okay, that was Governor Bush a long time ago, back in the 1990s. Abbott has pointed out some arrests in 2021 and sought out more funding, bringing back lawmakers back to special session, where Abbott's office already has received $1.3 billion out of this so far $3 billion that's going to be totaled up, meaning the governor's allocation for border security would be more than what is already given to the DPS accordingly. Okay? Here's an example. After an increasing number of National Guard members to 10,000 count, the Abbott administration moved $500 million from DPS, Texas Department of Criminal Justice, and the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission to help cover the costs. $500 million, okay? He's shifting money around. He's already got $1.3 billion, and he's moving $500 million over from other departments, from other agencies. The governor's office argues that although agencies it funds have to be reported, some are not subject to such rules. Okay, this is my own state governor saying this crap. This is very clear that Abbott and the current state's administration are running up a tab that legislature and taxpayers will have to cover. After the first year, lawmakers remain uncertain about the return of their multi-million-dollar investment. We, the people, don't know whether the amount of money was appropriate for what was needed, nor do we know what it was set out to do, nor do we know how to figure out what to do next. This is our money, and it's being invested on something that has no return, no possible outlook for a future. Okay, although this is nothing new to the old school street people or people of my days and all this other stuff, but many are in disbelief or just plain in denial that the administration, Abbott's administration, DPS, and the Texas Military Department arrest data that credits Operation Lone Star charges without explaining how they align with Operation's goal of capturing these border criminals. Okay? That crookedness is nothing new to us. We've seen this kind of crap before. But the data that is presented usually backed up by something. The data that is presented these days doesn't back up the Operation Lone Star policy that these three divisions, these three departments are doing. The two agencies, DPS and Texas Military Department, and the governor's administration. All this shifting everything around money with with nothing to report, at least nothing accurate, and nothing claiming that it's actually, border crossing crimes. And I'll give you an example. 200 miles away from the border, a woman in Coke County was arrested for having a loose leaf marijuana in her car's glove box. Okay? It weighed less than 2 ounces, and she was arrested. She had no prior criminal record, and she wasn't even an immigrant. But this was an American's arrest that was credited to Operation Lone Star, a policy that's supposed to be handling criminals that are crossing our border, illegal immigrants to be more specific, but criminal immigrants. Here's another thing. Abbott and his administration once claimed an 887 pounds of fentanyl seized, and is all credited to Operation Lone Star policy. This policy enabled law enforcement to seize 887 pounds of fentanyl. Here's the problem. It was 160 pounds, and it wasn't on a drug bust. It was accumulated throughout the course of time. The time being from March of 2021 to January of this year. January of 2022. And to make matters even more upsetting, and I don't mean to be, but this is the facts. 148 pounds of that 160 pounds that was seized, 148 pounds of fentanyl was seized out of Beto's hometown, Beto O'Rourke, in El Paso, where DPS and National Guardsmen have not had any additional members placed in his city. But to top it all off, the city that doesn't even use Operation Lone Star policies. They were on their own this entire time, while the governor was bringing in troops and appointing brand new state troopers and DPS troopers and all this good stuff. But they were governor was neglecting El Paso. It was only taken to choice counties. And it was in all these other areas where unlawful and unrelated arrests were being made, and very little to no drugs was being seized. And then to top it all off, it was fudged to, a ginormous amount, 7 times the amount of what was actually apprehended. And the majority of that, again, was out of El Paso, a place where the Operation Lone Star policy just isn't exercised. Here's another example. Throughout its 9-month period of its first year, OLS, which is Operation Lone Star, OLS was credited to 2,000 plus charges for and including cockfighting, sexual assault, and stalking. 270 charges for violent crimes such as rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. That was all claimed that the Operation Lone Star policy put into effect has made these kinds of arrests and charges. But, don't say but, however, when asked about the ties between the arrests and border security, the claims turned out to be inherently flawed. Okay? With the problem being that related to more to the crimes in communities throughout Texas and not cross-border crime. That woman that was arrested in 200 miles inside of the state, for example, 200 miles away from the border. Now, is there illegal immigrants activity? Yes. And is it what's being handled through Operation Lone Star? No, absolutely not. Operation Lone Star is a fraud. And now we're seeing it out in the open. Abuse of power amongst us by those that are currently in charge. It's a political, hate-based scam that's a racket through and through. If the operation isn't banking at a federal level, finance level, it's banking, making sure to shift money around through other departments and other states' agencies at the taxpayer's expense, all the way down to legal fees and fines on people that are not only not criminals, they're not even immigrants. No, what we're looking at is right out policy-driven, legalized corruption. It's a huge downer because we want something like this to be anywhere but here. You know, we don't want this at all, to be totally honest. But if it's going to be up in them there Yankee states, like the way we've been, you know, under the impression that that's the way it always is up there, as opposed to down here in Texas, where it's a hell of a lot more, down to earth, negotiated, a lot more pure. It just feels a lot more pure, God sent. But that's what's going on by the current governor, his administration, and those that are in charge of our state's departments and agencies currently.